22 years ago, I realize some of you weren't born 22 years ago and now think I'm old because I'm telling a story that 22 years ago. It's okay. I'm 47. That's old. I get it. So 22 years ago, there was this youth ministry conference phenomenon. It was the teenager equivalent of Promise Keepers. It was called Acquire the Fire. And they would travel around the country and they would fill up NFL stadiums, and they would have big time speakers and pump up teenagers and go, and they would be on fire. Thus the word. Maybe some of you remember those. So I remember there was one. It was at Ford Field, and there were 70,000 at Ford Field, and Reggie White was the speaker. Reggie White was the speaker. A great football player, ordained pastor, later politician, and it was such a big deal. It was on the radio, and so I remember he got up at the stage, and I was listening to on the radio, and he said, he started with these words, "Kids, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And so he asked them to just shout out what they wanted to be when they grow up, and you hear things like doctor and lawyer and professional football player and all of this. And he stops. And he said, "You misunderstood the question." I said, "I did not ask you what you wanted to do when you grow up. I asked you what you want to be when you grow up." And so he went on for the next 45 minutes to talk about character and mission, and why what we want to be is more important than what we want to do. And so that's kind of where these verses in John chapter 1 lay us. And so John chapter 1 verse 6, I'm going to pray, and then I'll read these verses to us. So let's pray. God, thanks for today. Thanks that the word is, and that we have a few moments to study. So God, I ask that you would be our teacher, that you would illuminate the words on these pages, that you would give us eyes to see and ears to hear what the Spirit says to us this morning. So help us understand your word today. In Jesus' name, amen. So John chapter 1 verse 6 says this, there was a man sent from God whose name was John. Not John the author, John the Baptist. This man came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all through him might believe. He was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. That was the true light, which gives light to every man coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own did not receive him. But as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God, to those who believe in his name, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. So as I read that, when I was in second grade, I had to memorize those 12 verses. And so I want that comes back in King James. So I fumble through them because I want to recite what's not in the text. But so as we talked about last week, I threw out words to you: Christology, soteriology, what God is, what God provides in salvation. And so John, being almost like a lawyer, presenting witnesses, he's calling people to the stand. This is my case. If last week was the opening argument, and John 20 verse 31 is the closing argument, everyone in between it is the support of the case. And so, to this day, I call my first witness, and my first witness is John the Baptist. And so, see over the next couple of verses how John the Baptist ushered in Jesus and talked about and gave proof that Jesus is the Son of God. Here's our main idea for this morning. The mission of a believer should resemble the mission of Jesus, and we're going to talk the last couple of verses, talk about really what the mission of Jesus was. The first half is what was the mission of John the Baptist. And so verses 6 through 9 says this, there was a man sent from God whose name was John the Baptist. John the Baptist was just a few months older than Jesus. They were relatives, cousins. Luke 1 tells us that John leaped in the womb when he heard Mary's voice. I've never been pregnant. I will never be pregnant. Thank goodness. I would be a science project if that ever were the case. But I remember watching our kids in the womb. Like, I could see them move around. It was the weirdest thing ever. And like, one of them would stick an elbow out, and Bridget would be like, "What the heck? Just stop." But they would roll. You could see them roll around and stick an elbow out and a knee or a foot, different things. I can't imagine what it would be like for a child to leap in the womb. One of our kids was 11 pounds when he was born. That narrows down the field a little bit. And imagine that one leaping. That would just hurt. It would hurt to think about it. Luke 1 tells us that Mary's voice. From the beginning of John's life, he was sent on a mission. His mission was to spread the word about the gospel. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. This man came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all through him might believe. He was not the light, but he was sent to bear witness of the light. The later verses remind us who the light is. That was the true light which gives light to every man coming in the world. So I want us to consider for a few minutes this morning that from the moment of our salvation, we were sent on mission. I would make a strong case that your life before salvation supports the mission that God sends you on. Because all of us have a story, and God uses all of that story on our mission. The fact that my parents got divorced when I was a senior in high school and I struggled with it for years is part of the mission that God sends me on. And God uses even our past to be part of our mission. But I want us to see that from the moment of salvation, we were sent on mission. As a 5th grader, as a 11th grader, as a 12th grader, as a retired, as a parent. So what is the foundation of that mission? You can ask yourself. We're going to talk about that through. What's the foundation of the mission that you have in your life? And these verses, if it was for John to bear witness of the light, the foundation of our witness is to be a testimony for Jesus Christ. So I wrote this question earlier. I really kind of wrestled with this question this week. Well, what does it mean to be a testimony for Jesus Christ? Probably 10 years ago, there was this saying going around all these Christian circles: share the gospel, use words if necessary. I'm like, throw up. Give me. And so let's just say for a minute that I was a salesperson for a Lexus dealership. I'm not. I've never owned a Lexus. I've thought about it, but I've never owned a Lexus. But let's just say that I was a salesperson for a Lexus dealership, and part of my job was to drive a brand new vehicle so I could help potential buyers become familiar with that vehicle. Some of you are in sales, some of you know this is what happens. After 6 weeks of zero sales, the manager brought me into his office and wondered how many people I talked to about this vehicle I was driving around. And I told him, I haven't talked to anyone about this vehicle. This vehicle is just supposed to sell itself by itself. People see me driving the vehicle, and they know I sell vehicles for this dealership. Isn't that enough? When they want what I drive, they will ask me about it, won't they? The manager was very kind in his response, and he told me that if I wanted to sell a vehicle, I had to actually talk to people about the vehicle and ask them if they were interested. And it is very much so. There are times that we live the Christian life the same way. We go through our Christian life, we convince ourselves that if we do the right things and avoid the wrong things, that people will want what we have, even if they don't know what we have. Also, about 20 years ago, on the west side of the state, the religious belt of the Midwest, this couple came in they wanted to get married in our church. They didn't go to our church, so I met with them just to find out what their story was and give them a tour of the church. And this girl stopped me in the middle of our conversation and said to me in our auditorium, she said, Pastor Chris, I've just wondered this my entire life. Could you help me out? And I said, sure. What? I felt this was kind of weird. She said, I see all these churches with T's on their building. What is that about? Even if they don't know what we just expect them to understand. A T. That is never, I did not do their wedding. They went to somewhere else. They chose that. It wasn't me, but it blows my mind that somebody in West Michigan, there are churches on every corner. There are like 20 Christian colleges in West Michigan, and this lady had no clue what a cross was. And so if we are to be a testimony for Jesus Christ, we actually have to be a witness. A witness is this. No, we talked last week, if you see a word multiple times in a verse, underline it because it means something. And so in these verses, witness is 3 times. You see witness 3 times. This man came for a witness, to bear witness, to bear witness. When a person is a witness, he believes that his testimony is 100% accurate, and he wants every listener to believe the same thing. It's his job to convince them. As an effective witness, John had to understand that the truth about Jesus was not the truth about John. I'm going to tell you everything I know about Jesus. I'm going to tell you everything that I know about the light, but I'm not the light. There's someone better than me that I can't even tie his shoes. He's that much better than me. I'm not even worthy to tie his shoes. John was not the light. Jesus is the light. John was the witness. John's witness, John's mission was to spread the truth concerning Jesus daily. Seal the deal on the Lexus. The T is spread the truth concerning Jesus every every day. So before we get to verse 10, the root word for witness, I don't want to bore you with Greek, but I want you to know that I study it. The root word for witness is martyr. Anyone know what a martyr is? Someone tell me, what's a martyr? Someone that dies for a cause. Or a less extreme version would be someone who is punished for a cause or suffers for a cause. Which means, if I'm going to be an effective witness for Jesus Christ, there has to be some point in my life where I suffer for it. The line that I preach the gospel, use words if necessary, I can go through my entire life and do that and never suffer for the cause of Christ. I can actually be an American Christian my entire life and never suffer for Jesus. I can keep my mouth shut and do good things my entire life, never go to church every Sunday, never suffer for Jesus. In that moment, we're standing on plywood and not the trampoline. For those that weren't here when I talked about the trampoline is meant to send us. It is naturally, a trampoline naturally causes a reaction. And we want to be a trampoline that sends into the harvest. You can watch the video if you want. 10. As much as the light of Jesus should push us into witnessing situations, the fear of martyrdom drives us to missionless living. Missionless living. So write down, if you're taking notes, write down John 12, verse 42. Keep your finger in John chapter 1. John 12, verse 42 says this. Nevertheless, even among the rulers, many believed in him. The religious leaders, the people that went to church that were complete wusses. Nevertheless, even among the rulers, many believed in him. But because of the Pharisees, they did not confess him, lest they should be put out of the synagogue, for they loved the praise of men more than the praise of God. The fear of martyrdom drives us to missionless living. I read this statistic this week, John chapter 1, verse 10. I read this statistic this week by a guy named Ed Stetzer, who once was the president of Lifeway Research, is kind of a church stat guru. And he said this, and I kind of chuckled at it. If 70% of your church is going too fast, which I can, and then he said, if 5% of your church isn't mad at you, you're not doing anything. The mission of the believer of Jesus Christ. If the mission of the believer is to be a testimony for Jesus Christ, there will be somebody that's mad at you. There will be some situation that you suffer through. You will feel like a martyr someday. You will want to walk away with your tail in between your legs like a dog that is pouting. You will feel the effects of this. As we as a church engage in mission living, we as a church will feel the effects of this. Positive and negative. Verse 10. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world did not know him. He came to his own did not receive him. But as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become the children of God, to those who believe on his name. Did you know that Jesus... No, that's... If the mission of Jesus was met with rejection, we have to understand that the mission of our mission is going to meet rejection at some point too. So here's my second point. The mission of Jesus encourages forward in our mission. The mission of Jesus encourages believers to press forward in our mission. Last week we read that Jesus walked on the earth as a man. First 5 verses of John chapter 1. We read that Jesus created all things, and we talked about there is no object or rule that Jesus did not put into motion. It's all, Jesus set it forth. The universe, all things, and the rules that go with it. John adds that mankind did not recognize Jesus. He came, they didn't know him. They didn't understand him. They didn't recognize him. It would be like if I were to walk, I'm at the football stadium, I rush the field after a football game, and I walk up to Jim Harbaugh and I talk to him like he's my best friend. Never happened. One, I'm not rushing a football field because that's silly. Have a good wrestling tournament, guys. Because if I did that and I'm like, hey, Jim, what's up? You're like, who are you? I don't even know you, and the security people need to take you away. Jesus came to the world, and the world said, who are you? We don't know you. You tell us all this stuff about you, but you must be kind of crazy. In verse 11, Jesus said those people blatantly rejected Jesus as an adult in the same way the innkeeper rejected Jesus in Luke chapter 2. So keep your finger in John chapter 1. Turn to Romans 1 for a minute. And I want to make the suggestion to you that people that say, I don't recognize God, or I can't see God in my life, God wants no part of me, they are looking for a reason. They just don't. Their eyes are closed. They don't want the concept of God to be a part of their lives. Romans 1, verse 20. For since the creation of the world, His invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even His eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. I mean, just let that sink in for a minute. The attributes of God are clearly seen. People are without excuse. Because although they knew God, they did not glorify Him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. I would say this about that verse. If someone has an excuse that they can't see God, it might be because we're not being a good enough example of demonstrating God. We're being too quiet. And then Jeremiah, you can write this verse down. I'm not going to go to it for the sake of time. Jeremiah 7, 25 through 27 simply says that till that point, completely ignored everything the Old Testament had to offer. They totally just ditched God because they didn't want to. Jeremiah 7, 25 through 27. In the Old Testament, everyone say the Old Testament is important. Say that out loud. The Old Testament is important. Okay, I want to see if you're awake. Let's try it again. The Old Testament is important. Okay, in the Old Testament, there were nations that deliberately rejected the intervention of God in their lives. In 2022, there are people that deliberately reject the intervention of God in their lives. In the New Testament, the Jews dismissed Jesus as crazy, lunatic, liar. didn't have a great ministry in his hometown because of a lack of faith. There were some that said, can anything good come from Nazareth? Little podunk town of Nazareth. Nothing could be good there. The Pharisees and religious leaders told him he was of Lucifer. During Passover, the Jews were ready to declare him king at the beginning of the week and wanted him dead toward the end of the week. Like, just think about the mission. He is on mission right now, and all the bad things that I just said. The mission of Jesus. Luke 19:10. You can write that verse down. Luke 19:10. The Son of Man has come to seek and save that which is lost. Seek and save that which is lost. Luke 19:10. The mission of Jesus was met with all of these people, and for you or me, we would have given up far before Jesus gave up. We would have given up. We probably, some of us, depending on the day of the week, would have given up at there's no room in the inn. And we were like, okay, you don't want us, we're done. We're going to Bethlehem and we're taking our ball and we're going home. The encouragement to press forward in our mission is that as many people that did reject Jesus, verse 12 tells us that as many as received him. Even though there were hardships, and even though people walked away, and even though there are things in the Bible that talk to us like, it is hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. It's easier to find a needle in a haystack. There are lots of reasons. If you're a Christian on mission, there are lots of stories that would make you want to not be on mission. There are lots of stories that remind us we have to be on mission. But as many as received him, verse 12 and 13, but as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God, to those who believe in his name, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. So underline the word receive and the word believe. The word receive and the word believe, because I want to suggest to us that those two words are a package. A person can believe something is true and never act on that belief. How many of you have flossed your teeth in the last week? Okay. How many of you go to the dentist regularly and be like, I know I need to floss my teeth, I just don't do it? Anyone? Okay. And you've heard, if you go to the dentist regularly, you've heard these words. You need to floss more. Flossing is important. Our dentist in first grade, I told you I had 19 cavities when I was in first grade. I saw the dentist a lot. He had this thing on his wall above his office door that said, you don't have to floss all of your teeth, only the ones you want to keep. A person can believe something is true and never act on that belief. There are children that live in our house that want a 2-week advance notice on their dentist appointment so they can start flossing. There are other children in our house that say, I have flossed twice this year. The dentist did it for me. Again, I won't tell you which ones they are. It is fun guessing. You can probably tell. So a person can believe something is true and never act on that belief. Believing and receiving requires action. Don't lose me, Tom. And receiving requires acting. Acknowledging the claims of Jesus Christ. Acknowledge. Place my faith and trust in Jesus. Yield my allegiance to Jesus. Go on mission because of Jesus. Get on the trampoline. I'm not putting 2 feet on this because I don't know what it's going to do with me, which is a really good example of how we walk with Jesus some days. I don't want this trampoline to throw me in a direction and make me fall off the stage and lose my balance and look silly in front of other people. So we don't engage on the mission that Jesus put in front of us because we don't want to look silly. We don't want to lose our balance. We're afraid if we say, I don't know the answer to that question, that we will be dumb. And so if we say it's easier to stay on plywood. You know, you go on mission, when you take that plunge on the trampoline, there will be some people who reject. You will pray for some people their entire lives, and they will die and they will end up in hell. There are just some people that will reject the truth of Jesus. There are some people that will declare there is no room in the inn. You can be close to me, but you can't come inside my residence. You can be in my garage. You can be on my property, but not in my residency. You certainly can't sit on my couch. Don't get my bedroom messy. Go out in the garage where the lawnmower is and the dog food and the animals and all of that. The mess of the garage. Go there, God. Some people will believe facts without any transforming action in their lives at all. You pray and you pray and you pray and you know this. Rejection is hard to swallow. You don't want to be told no. Some of you sitting in this room have kids that are not walking with Jesus. And that rejection, take that rejection personally. When you pour into life, when you do this and you pour into lives and they reject, you take it personally. And Jesus took it personally. But Jesus pressed on. He kept going. He didn't stop. Because the sweetness and believing helps us to press forward. The sweetness of a person accepting Christ keeps pushing us forward. Those baptisms we did in August were beautiful. It pushed us forward to keep going, and it gave hope that more can happen. I want to remind us, I grew up in a church, maybe you grew up in this type of church too, that was behavior modification. Salvation meant behavior modification. And I want us to, these verses tell us that spiritual birth is up to God. I have a role to play, but verse 12 says that Jesus can to become the children of God. I can push and I can make you want, but man, it's up to God to get it. John 19:10. You can write that verse down. This. Pilate said to Jesus, "Do you know that I have the power to crucify you and the power to release you?" That word power is the same word as right. Pilate had authority to release or crucify Jesus. Jesus has power and authority for us to become the children of God. And so spiritual birth, spiritual rebirth, you know this. Spiritual rebirth doesn't come from being in the right family. Just because your parents walked with Jesus doesn't mean that you will walk with Jesus. Or just because your kids walk with Jesus doesn't mean your grandkids will walk with Jesus. Spiritual rebirth doesn't come through decisions of parents or grandparents. It doesn't come from influential people. It comes from the authority of Jesus only, giving light to every man. Jesus was met with rejection. The mission of John the Baptist was met with rejection. He got beheaded because someone didn't like him. The mission of Jesus and the mission of John the Baptist both should encourage us to press forward in our mission. And so I want to just remind us, the sweet spot of our mission is found on the when our trampoline, we're sending out into the mission. We're sending out into the harvest. We are automatically sent out naturally. And so I actually need a couple of volunteers. I just need 2 people to pass. I have something I want to challenge you with. This is our 2 volunteers to just help me pass these out. I'll keep one. Anyone? One. Thank you. I'll give you to get one. To get one. It's yellow because I don't want you to lose it. I want you. So here's what, as we in this year keep pressing forward into our mission as a church, I want you to understand that you, as an individual, as a salesperson, as a retired person, as one who is a college student or a high school student, or one who works in a chiropractor's office, or an insurance office, and the different things that happen in this room, you have a unique mission that Jesus has placed you on. And I want you to take a few moments this morning to consider, what is your mission? What is your mission? I'm gonna, in a few minutes, I'm just gonna give you a little bit of time to contemplate that. I'm gonna have Josh play his guitar, just some soft, quiet music, so you can have some time to think your unique mission, and who are 3 people? If your mission requires us to be a witness, who are 3 people that you know need Jesus, that you can pray for God to open a conversation? Because those are important conversations to have, and those are important prayers to have. And so I want to give you just a few minutes to think about these. If you want to write some down, you can. And then I would actually like it. I don't know how this works, but I'm going to throw this out there. I would actually like to pray over those at the end of this service. So if you wrote something down and you can bring it up here and just lay it on the stage. I want to pray over those before we go. And if you don't want to do that, that's okay. If you want to bring them up and I'll pray over them, that's fine. I'm going to pray for all of them in this room anyway, but I would like some in my hand as a demonstration. So I'm going to give you just a little bit of time to be quiet and respond, and then I will pray, okay?